The first window that we're going to go over in the interface here is the overlay window, which I've kind of circled with my mouse sitting right there. On the left-hand side is the player, or what's known as a source window. Now, this is where you're going to bring in your source files that you are going to be trimming. This is where, if you're capturing from tape, that you'll see what's on the tape and you'll set your ins and outs, or you'll dump the tape. This is basically where all your source material is going to be coming from. The second window over here on the right-hand side is your recorder window. It's called this because of the fact that that's where you're going to see what's on the timeline, and basically that's what's going to go back out to tape, or that's what's going to go out to your file when you create a file at the end of it. You'll notice that the blue box, I'm hitting the tab key, and you'll notice that the blue box changes. That shows you which one of these is active. You can either do it by the tab key, or you can click on it with the left mouse button to see which one it is. This window also is your main editing window, or main window of the program, rather. You'll see the little X right up here. That's your exit when you're going to be exiting the program. Now, I know in a lot of Windows programs, you're going to want to come over and hit the X in the total right-hand side, but if you do that, all you're going to do is close that window. If you want to close the program down, that's the one you hit right here. Now, inside of this, everybody always asks this question, and when I found out about it, I just kind of laughed because of the fact it was so simple. You see these little triangles? Those two little triangles right there, all they are indicating is that either you are on the A, beginning frame of a clip, or B, the ending frame of a clip. And because there's no clip in there, it's supposing that it is the beginning and ending, so you're seeing both of them up there. So when you see that triangle, don't worry about it too much. It just means you're either at the start or the end of the clip. Down here, this is where your time code will be shown, and also while it's playing, you'll see the stereo audio levels coming across right here. Down below there, you'll see the CUR with time code. That just means where is my cursor at this moment, and it'll tell you what time code that it's at. Plus, you can also see what time code your in point is, your out point. This screen is a little bit small. If it was a little bit larger, you'd also see in, out, duration, and total. And duration just means that when you set an in and set an out, you know how much time is in between those two, and then the total just tells you what the total clip is. Now, right below that, in this area right here, you have basically a little bit of a shuttle. This acts as a shuttle, so if you pull it to the left, it'll go in reverse. Depending upon how far you pull it over is how fast it goes in reverse, and the same how far you pull it to the right, how fast it's going to go forward. When you let go of it, it just snaps to the pause position very, very quickly. Here, you can go through very, very quickly. When you have a clip in, you can grab the controller and be able to drag it back and forth. If you have a 20-minute clip in here, you can just rip through it very, very fast. And then, of course, for all of us wonderful button pushers, we have all the wonderful buttons down here, such as stop, rewind, previous frame, play. And I want you to notice that whenever you see a little down arrow like you see right there, because of the fact that the program is kind of being placed into this smaller desktop, whenever you see a down arrow like that, all you have to do is select it with the left mouse button, and you can go down and see the buttons that are hidden. That just means that there are buttons that can't be seen because of the fact that the window isn't wide enough to show them. Over here, you'll see that you have some other buttons. This is your overwrite to timeline and insert to timeline. And once again, you see the little down arrow, which will show your add clip to player window and add subclip to player button. So if I need to get to those, all I'd have to do is hit that down arrow to be able to do that. On this side, it's basically the exact same thing. You have your cursor, you have your in and out. Of course, you can see the duration on this side of it right here, and we would see total also on that side of it. The only real difference down here, because you have set in and out, you have all the same buttons you had on the other one, but here's where you actually can export. And of course, we'll be talking about export in a completely different chapter, but it's the place that you'll be looking for it. So that right there is the overlay window. And the last thing I'll say about it is it's also where all of your pull-down menus are when you need to look for certain commands through the pull-down windows. The next series of windows we're going to look at are the ones right here that are tabbed. Now, just to show you how this works, if I were to take this bin tab right here and pull it out, you can see that it's a completely and totally separate window. But, you know, if you're working on a laptop or you're working on a single monitor, all you have to do is just take that tab, pull it up, and drop it. And you can see that right there, it just drops right in with these other windows. So it's a real space saver to be able to do this. And these are basically called the palettes. The first palette is the bin palette. It's broken up into two separate areas. On the left-hand side right here is the root area. or the folder structure area, which basically allows me to be able to take all of my assets and be able to organize them in the way that I want to be able to organize them inside the program. Now, these aren't real, quote, Windows folders. These are just folders inside of the program. So when you create one here and you place assets inside of it, you're not creating a Windows folder, you're just creating one right here. On the right-hand side, however, is all the assets that are inside of these folders. Now, just to show you very quickly, if I'm over here in the left-hand side and I right-click and select Open Folder, here's my Edius project media. Notice that there's several subfolders underneath that. If I select OK, you'll see that not only does it bring in everything from the Edius project folder, but also brings in all the subfolders as folders inside of my bin so that I can start to look and see all of the assets that I have, and they're already organized if I already have them organized on the hard drive. And that's basically how the bin works. We'll talk a little bit more about the bin later, but this is the basics of how it works. The next one, I'm going to select the Effect tab so we can see the Effect palette. Works basically the same way the bin does. On the left-hand side, I have the tree of everything that we have. This is where my video filters, audio filters, transitions, audio crossfades, keyers, and everything are located. And as you notice, when I select one of them, if there's something in that folder, it shows up on the right-hand side, just as the bin did. But when you see a little plus like that, if you select it, it's going to open it up for you. And so I have a subfolder called Color Correction in there, and of course, all of my color correction stuff is there. Now, just so you know, when you see the red S on any of them, it's basically what's called a system preset. You'll notice that just regular color balance is right there, but right underneath it is a dark and bright color balance with that red S. That means that at the factory, they basically took this color balance and they created this variation of it just by manipulating it and then saved it as a system preset. And you're able to do the same thing, by the way, when you either combine filters or use a filter and you've tweaked it just perfectly and you're going to reuse it over and over and over again. The exact same thing. You can pull it up here and have your system preset sitting right there. Other than that, that's basically the way the effects palette works. But like I said, this is where you find all of your effects that you're going to be placing onto your videos in the effect palette. Now, the next tab is the sequence marker. Now, notice it says sequence marker, but when I select the player window, it now says clip marker. Now, this is something that's not brand new in the latest incarnation, but it is a fairly new feature that you can create clip markers once they're in the player window, and you can put comments on them so you have metadata with them so an editor could read it if you're not the one editing. However, when you're on the timeline and I go to the recorder window, it turns into a sequence marker. Now, the big difference between the two of them, sequence marker is going to go into the timeline ruler and it's not going to move. In other words, if you sit there and shift the timeline and take your clips and move them somewhere else, that sequence marker is going to remain exactly where it was. However, if you have a clip marker, when you move that clip, you'll always be able to see where those markers are because they do move with the clip. And that's the difference between the two of them. The source browser. We're going to be going into this in a little bit more depth when we're talking about ingesting media. But this is something that basically was new to version 6 and above. It used to be that Edius had like P2 Select and XDCam Select and these different programs that would sit down in the icon tray and you'd bring them up as you needed them to be able to grab different types of media. Because one of the huge strengths of Edius is the fact that it can basically bring in almost any type of format, any type of codec, and place those formats and codecs on the timeline and be able to edit them in real time without any transcoding or without having to unwrap and rewrap. And this is where, when you get into the kind of highly specialized, like P2, XDCam EX, Infinity, JPEG 2000, these types of folder structure type codecs, that you're able to go in, be able to grab them very quickly and place them either in the bin or directly on the timeline from here if you want to edit straight off of the media. So that is the source browser. And like I said, we'll be going into that a little bit more. And that's a sequence marker, effect, and bin. The next window that I'd like to go over, and the reason I don't have this with the rest of the palettes, is the information window. And the reason I don't have it up there with the rest of the palettes is because this is one of the most important windows to me. And I always want to have it in view. And you'll understand why as we go through this tutorial. Now, it's broken up into two parts. I'm going to come up in the bin, and I'm just going to very quickly grab a clip. And I'm going to take that clip and drag it down onto the timeline. And you'll notice now that it's basically come alive. And in the top half of this, you'll see that all the information you could ever want, clip name, source in and out, source duration, timeline in and out, speed, freeze frame. I mean, it tells you where the file is on your hard drive. It gives you all the information about the clip that you could ever want. However, since Edius basically edits anything, I hardly ever look at this upper part. It's the lower part of this window that is more important to me. The lower part of this window, as you can see, already has the layouter sitting in it, but this is where every transition, every filter, every keyer, in other words, everything you do on this clip is going to be listed in the lower half of this. So when you're putting color correction on and you're doing other things to it, this is where you'll see all of the different filters and keyers that you've placed on this clip. And there is where you're going to double click on them to be able to open up the dialog boxes and be able to work with the options inside of those. And that's the reason why I have that window sitting always in plain view, because man, when I get on a clip, I don't want to have to go up and sit there and try to find a tab to find it. I want to be able to see what's on it immediately. The last window that we're going to be looking at of the graphical user interface is the timeline. This is where it all happens. This is where you're going to place your clips after you trim them, or if you're a timeline editor, you're going to bring your clips into here and trim them right on the timeline. This is where you place effects, transitions. This is where all the timing is. And I mean, this is literally where all the magic happens. And there's several different parts of this particular window that I want you to be able to see. First off, it is kind of nice that it puts the project name up there. So just in case you forget what you're doing or what project you're working on. And as a grandfather, I'm constantly forgetting things. So I'm glad it's there. Right below there, now this is a little different because on versions 5 and below, these buttons were up above the timeline, but they've placed them over here. This is the overwrite or insert mode. This tells you whether or not you're working in ripple mode. This also allows you this set group and link mode. When you select a clip and you want to work with each one of the channels on it separately, you can undo the link between the video and audio tracks very, very quickly. And of course, and this is set your snap to event. In other words, how your cursor is going to be working as it's snapping to different things. Right below this, you can set, and as you can see, my ruler is growing and growing here. I can use this pull right here to be able to just see how far I want to zoom in on my timeline. However, I can also hit this little down arrow, and as you can see, I can go from 1 frame all the way up to 60 minutes and then to fit. And there are keyboard shortcuts to go very quickly. 1 frame, Control 1, 5 frames, Control 2, and so on and so forth. Now, one of the features of this that I really love, however, is this. If I'm working in an area and I'm sitting right here and I want to be able to go out and say, oh, gee, I need to come all the way down here, I just hit it once, it goes to fit, I go to where I need to go, and then when I hit it one more time, it goes right back to the view that I was looking at before I hit fit. So it allows me to, bam, bring it out to where I can see the whole thing, go down to where I want to be very quickly, hit it one more time, and I'm right back into my view that I was editing with to begin with. Down here, these are your tracks. Your 2 video tracks, that's what I always start with, is 2 video tracks and 4 audio tracks. If you're coming from a version before 6, this is going to look a little foreign to you. And the reason being is because of the fact that the way we worked before is that if you selected a track, that's basically how you told Edius where you wanted your video to go, where you wanted your audio to go. But this has been split out. We now have these blocks, and I can take these blocks, and if I put it on 2V, then any video coming from the player window is going to go down to 2V or 1V, bringing it down here. Also the same here. I can sit there and rearrange and basically tell Edius where I want each one of my tracks to go when I'm bringing it down from the player window, and can do so individually for each time that I am bringing down something. This is where I actually work with the blocks, and this is where I tell Edius where I want things to come down to. Selecting tracks now, however, is more of a function of what track is my keyboard shortcut going to affect or something of that nature. And one of the other neat things about this is that now if I hold down Control, I can select multiple tracks. In fact, it's just like Windows. If I select 2V, hold down Shift, and then select 4A, it's going to select all the tracks. If I just go in individually and do it, it's going to deselect the last one and select whatever I'm clicking on. If I hold down Control, I can select multiple tracks. Now, if I select a lot of these tracks and leave one and I do a cut, it's going to cut everything that's selected. But it's not going to cut what's not. So it gives you a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more power when you're manipulating the timeline in this way. And so that's the reason why that they basically separated it out. For those of you used to an older Edius, you were used to the audio and video being in the buttons up here. If you want to strip the video off completely, you just hit that little V and you notice that block just went dark. Or if I want to completely strip the audio, I can just hit that A, and now all of the audio tracks have gone dark, so no audio would come down from the player window. So instead of looking for that over across the top of the timeline, you'll find the two little buttons right here, V and A, that either strip all audio or all video completely and totally off of it. Now, you'll notice that some of the buttons, if you've used prior versions of Edius, you'll notice that some of the buttons are missing out of the track area. These are the same old buttons of video mute and audio mute, so when you're editing, you don't have to delete audio or video just to see what it sounds like or what it looks like without it. You can just hit that mute right there. However, when I right-click on the sync button, here's my track lock and unlock and my track sync lock and unlock right there that used to be sitting up here. So if you want to lock a track, this is exactly how you do it. You just right-click, and then you hit the track lock. And of course, now what I really love is that you see a pattern go across the track, letting you know that it's locked, as well as the little look of the lock right here. And then to get it to unlock, you just right click again and go to track unlock. Now, the only other thing that I wanted to show you is as you go across up here, notice that a lot of these buttons have down arrows with them. Now, this is create a new sequence. Now, for those of you who know what a sequence is, if I select that button, you're going to see a second timeline come up, and now I have two different timelines that I can work with. That's just creating a new timeline in the exact same project. If you want to create a new project, you need to hit the down arrow and then select new project, or of course hit Control N. The next button over is open a project, and once again, when you have the down arrow, you'll take a look, open project, or import a sequence, bring another project in, and you can merge those together. The next button right here is save project, and of course, the down arrow is going to have your save as, consolidate, and export your project out. That's where you do those functions. Now, the next three buttons, the reason I show this is because people get a little confused with this. This is cut, copy, and paste. Now, cut, copy, and paste is exactly what it sounds like from Windows. If I use that scissors and cut, it's just going to take something off of the timeline, and then I can take it and paste it somewhere else. It's not going to cut and make one file on the timeline into two. So this is cut, copy, and paste from Windows. This is your replace clip. This is your delete and ripple delete. Now, the reason there's two different buttons here is because of the fact that if I have something selected on the timeline and I hit delete, then it's going to just delete what's sitting there, and that's all there is. However, let me come down here and just add a couple of cuts, and I'm going to select this middle one right here. Now, if I hit delete, you'll see that it deletes. However, if I hit ripple delete, you'll see that it not only deletes that middle clip, but it also brings everything over to where the gap is closed. And that's basically what ripple means. The next button over is my best friend, undo. And it's Control Z, just like it is in Windows. My understanding is you have 99 levels of undo that you can hit that thing 99 times in a row, and it will undo 99 steps. But to be perfectly honest with you, if you hit that thing 99 times in a row ever, please stop editing and never edit again. It's not your forte. The next button, redo. And then this button is add cut point, which you can see basically if you look down, you'll see in parentheses on the total right-hand side C, that's the keyboard shortcut for it. And if you hit the down arrow, you can see that you can do the selected tracks, or you can do all tracks. The next button is set default transitions, to where you can set the default transition, and you can create it the cursor, create a clip in. You can do paste clip in, clip out. This is kind of cool because it allows you to be able to work with clips that, like if you're very close to the beginning, the very starting frame, it enables you to be able to manipulate a little bit to where you're not having jump frames in the middle of your transitions. And we'll talk about that when we talk about transitions. The next button, guys, is just create a title. If you have more than one titler in here, the down arrow will let you pick which titler you want to use. This is the toggle voiceover display. Basically, all that means, I'm going to go ahead and select it right now so you can see it. You can see right here that I'm working on the computer and I have a microphone sitting right here, and I can do a voiceover right here. I can start to record. I can either place it directly to the track or place it in the bin so it doesn't go on the track, and then I have control over it. And by the way, it's non-destructive, meaning that if I have video up there and I'm reading through a script or something of that nature, that it'll lay it down on the tracks and it doesn't overwrite the video and whatnot. I can tell it exactly what track I want to go to, and it's going to go to that track right there. The next button is toggle the bin window. If I select that one, the bin basically goes away. If I select it again, it comes back up again. So if you ever hit that X like I was talking about before, thinking you're going to end the program and you end up just getting rid of the windows, all you really have to do is select that button right there. It'll come right back, or you select the B key on the keyboard and it'll do the same thing. The audio mixer, we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but I will show it to you. If I select that button right there, you'll see that it brings up the audio mixer inside of Edius, and I just want you to be able to see that. And the very last button here is toggle palette display. And that just allows you to be able to pick whether you want to show effect, information, marker, or if you want to hide all or show all. And so basically, guys, that is the user interface. Those are the windows inside of Edius and what each one of them do. And as we go through this and start editing, you'll see how they kind of all work in conjunction with each other.